Part 1. In the silent stretch of space near the outer rim of the Andromeda Arm, where stars burned cold and distant, a small monitoring station floated alone. It was called Helios 7, a lonely outpost run by a skeleton crew of 3. Its job was simple: listen. For signals, for anomalies, for anything that did not belong in the quiet hum of the cosmos. Most days nothing happened. Weeks could pass without so much as a whisper from the void, but today was different. Lieutenant Carl Dawson sat in the dim glow of the comms console, sipping lukewarm coffee from a dented mug. He had been on shift for 6 hours, eyes half-lidded, mind drifting through the slow rhythm of routine. Then the speakers crackled. Not the usual static or the soft ping of distant pulsars. This was something else. A low rhythmic pulse that repeated every 11 seconds. It was not random. It carried structure, pattern, purpose. Carl sat up straight. He tapped his screen, rerouting the signal through the deep spectrum analyzer. The readout confirmed what his gut already knew. This was artificial. Not human, not from any known alien species in the Terran database. The transmission came from a dead zone, an area long marked as uninhabitable after the Krell Concord vanished thousands of years ago. No ships went there. No probes returned. It was a graveyard of broken stars and forgotten ruins. Yet something was calling from it. He patched the feed through to the main hub aboard the patrol frigate Vanguard, which orbited a safe distance away. Captain Ray Monroe answered on the first ring, his face sharp with alertness despite the late hour. "Dawson, you got something?" "I think so, sir. Signal just came in, strong, clear, repeating, doesn't match any known origin." Monroe leaned closer to the screen. "Play it." Carl hit the playback. The sound filled the comm channel, a deep resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through bone more than ear. Beneath it, layered like whispers in a storm, were fragments of something almost like language. Not words exactly, but meaning, urgency, fear. Monroe went quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Record everything, full spectrum, and send it to Fleet Command with Priority Omega tagging." Carl's fingers flew across the console. Priority Omega meant only one thing: galaxy-level threat. It had never been used before. Not during the Zenth border skirmishes. Not even during the Droll methane crisis. This was new territory. Within the hour, Helios 7 signal was confirmed by every deep space listening post under Terran control, from the icy rings of Neptune to the far colonies near Proxima. Each station reported the same thing: a single unbroken transmission echoing from the Krell dead zone. And though it carried no translation, no sender ID, no coordinates beyond its origin point, every listener understood the same terrible truth. This was not a message. It was a warning. Back on Earth, in the orbital command hub Aegis Prime, Fleet Admiral Lena Ortiz stood in the central war room, arms crossed, eyes locked on the main display. The screen showed the signal waveform pulsing like a heartbeat. Around her, officers moved quickly, voices low but tense. Data streamed in from every corner of human space. All of it pointed to one conclusion. Something had triggered an ancient alarm, and the whole galaxy could hear it. Ortiz turned to Dr. Nora Finch, the fleet's top xenolinguist, who had been pulled from her research station on Mars. "Can you make sense of it?" Nora adjusted her glasses, her expression tight with concentration. "It's not language as we know it. No syntax, no grammar. But there's emotional resonance embedded in the frequency. It's broadcasting pure intent. And that intent is survival." "Survival from what?" Ortiz asked. Nora hesitated. "I don't know yet. But whoever sent this wasn't just scared. They were desperate. And they wanted everyone to know." Meanwhile, aboard the Vanguard, Carl couldn't sleep. He replayed the signal over and over in his quarters, headphones pressed tight to his ears. There was something beneath the surface, something almost human in its plea. He thought of his younger sister back on Luna, of the farms on Titan, of the schools on New Seattle. All of it felt fragile now, like glass under a hammer. The next morning, Fleet Command issued a galaxy-wide bulletin. All Terran vessels were to monitor the signal. All civilian traffic near the Andromeda Arm was rerouted. Scientific teams were assembled. And for the first time in history, the Terran Defense Fleet went to silent alert. Not for war, but for something worse, the unknown. What no one realized yet was that humanity was not alone in hearing the call. On distant worlds with skies of violet and oceans of ammonia, other civilizations were also listening. Some sent scouts, others prepared weapons. A few simply shut down their networks, hoping to disappear. But the signal did not care who heard it. It had done its job. It had woken the galaxy. Carl stood on the observation deck of the Vanguard, staring out at the starfield. The Krell dead zone glowed faintly on the edge of his vision, a smudge of darkness where light refused to go. He wondered what had happened there, what had been lost, and what was coming back. He didn't know it yet, but he would be the first human to stand face to face with the truth behind the signal, and when he did, the galaxy would change forever. For now, though, there was only the echo, the pulse, the warning, they are coming, save yourselves. Part 2. Fleet Admiral Lena Ortiz stood in the center of the command chamber aboard Aegis Prime, her boots clicking softly against the metal floor. Around her the air hummed with tension. Screens lined the walls, each showing feeds from different sectors of human space. But all of them carried the same symbol now, a red alert glyph pulsing in time with the mysterious signal from the Krell dead zone. The message had spread faster than anyone expected, not just through human networks but across alien channels too. Ships from 3 known species had already changed course toward the source, some out of curiosity, others out of fear. Ortiz called an emergency council. Within 12 hours, captains, scientists, and diplomats gathered in the orbital hub. Among them was Captain Ray Monroe, still in his flight suit, having just returned from a recon sweep near the signal's origin. Beside him stood Dr. Nora Finch, her eyes tired but sharp, clutching a datapad filled with waveform analyses. Also present was Lieutenant Carl Dawson, now promoted to acting squadron liaison after his role in first detecting the transmission. He looked younger than the others, but no one questioned his place. He had heard the call before anyone else. The meeting began without ceremony. Ortiz laid out what they knew. The signal was not a random burst. It repeated every 11 seconds without fail. It carried no encryption, yet resisted all attempts at full decoding. Most troubling of all, it used a resonance frequency that bypassed standard shielding, meaning any civilization with even basic radio technology could pick it up. That included farming colonies on backwater worlds, deep-sea research outposts, and nomadic alien clans who barely used electricity. The galaxy had been handed an emergency broadcast and there was no off switch. Monroe leaned forward. "We need to go back. Send a full task force, not just to listen, to investigate." Ortiz nodded slowly. "Agreed, but we can't do this alone. If other species are moving toward the source, we either fight them for access or work with them. And I don't think we have time for war." Nora spoke up. The signal's emotional layer suggests cooperation was part of the original intent. The Krell, if they really sent this, wanted everyone to hear it for a reason. Maybe they knew no single species could handle what's coming. That word, coming, hung in the air like smoke. No one knew what they were. But the dread was real. Reports had already started trickling in. A Zenth patrol ship near the Cygnus Rift had vanished without a trace. A Droll mining station on the edge of the Helix Nebula went dark after detecting an unknown energy spike. Coincidence? Maybe. But the timing felt too close to ignore. Ortiz made her decision. "We form a joint mission. Human-led, but open to observers from allied species. Monroe, you command the fleet. Dawson, you'll lead the comms and sensor team. Nora, you stay with us on Aegis Prime. And keep analyzing the signal. Look for hidden patterns, anything we missed." Preparations began immediately. The heavy cruiser, Iron Resolve, was pulled from dry dock and refitted in record time. 2 support frigates, 3 scout drones, and a science vessel packed with xenotech specialists joined the formation. Within 48 hours, the task force was ready to jump. But before they left, something unexpected happened. A message arrived, not through official channels, but through a backdoor diplomatic frequency used only in dire emergencies. It was from the Veln, a reclusive insectoid species that had refused all contact with humans for over a century. Their message was short. "We hear the call. We send a ship. Do not fire." Monroe read the transmission twice. "They're scared," he said quietly. "Really scared." The Veln vessel arrived 3 hours later. A sleek obsidian craft shaped like a folded wing. It matched speed with the Iron Resolve without hailing, just drifting in silent formation. No one spoke. No one needed to. The shared fear was enough. As the fleet prepared for the final jump to the Krell dead zone, Ortiz gave one last order from Aegis Prime. Broadcast our mission parameters on all open frequencies. Tell every listening ear that humanity is going to the source, not to claim it, but to understand it. And if anyone wants to join, they're welcome. The response was immediate. A droll methane tanker altered course. A Zenth scout cluster detached from their main fleet. Even a lone ship from the ocean world of Gliese 6E67, its hull shimmering like wet stone, signaled its intent to follow. For the first time in history, ships from 5 different species moved as one, not under treaty, not under threat, but under a single unspoken question. What is coming for us? The jump was smooth. Space folded and snapped back into place, and there it was, the dead zone, a patch of sky where stars seemed dimmer, as if light itself was being swallowed. At its center floated the ruins of a massive ring structure, half collapsed, covered in strange glyphs that pulsed faintly with the same rhythm as the signal. Monroe ordered a cautious approach. Dawson monitored all sensors, his hand steady despite the knot in his stomach. Nothing attacked them. No weapons fired, only silence thick and heavy. Then from the ring a new signal emerged. Not the repeating warning. This was different, slower, softer, almost like a sigh. Nora, watching from Aegis Prime, gasped. It's responding. It knows we're here. The Veln ship drifted closer, its hull rippling with internal light. One of their pilots, tall, chitinous, with eyes like black glass, stepped into a shuttle and requested docking permission with the Iron Resolve. Monroe granted it without hesitation. When the Veln envoy entered the command deck, it did not speak. Instead, it placed a small crystal on the table. The moment it touched metal, the crystal glowed and a new layer of the original signal played, not as sound but as images. A dying world, skies filled with machines that looked like swarms of metal locusts, cities crumbling into dust, and then a final act, the activation of the beacon. The envoy finally spoke, its voice a dry rasp. We lost our homeworld to this. Long ago, we thought we were alone. Now we know we were just first. Monroe looked at Dawson. Dawson looked at the screen. The truth was worse than they imagined. This wasn't just a warning. It was a memory, a tombstone, and a countdown. Back on Earth, panic began to spread. News of the joint fleet's discovery leaked. People crowded spaceports demanding evacuation plans. Governments argued over resource allocation, but Ortiz held firm. We don't run, she told the council. We prepare. The fleet remained at the ring, scanning, recording, sharing data across species lines. Trust was fragile, but it was growing. They had all heard the same cry. Now they would face the answer together. No one knew how much time they had. But for the first time, the galaxy wasn't just listening. It was gathering. And that perhaps was the only hope they had. Farsian at the Joint Task Force hung in the silent dark near the broken ring, its pieces drifting like bones in space. Captain Ray Monroe stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, watching the alien envoy's crystal still glow softly on the command table. The images it had shown played over and over in his mind. Cities falling, skies black with machines. A world erased not by war, but by hunger. The Veln had lost everything, and now the same shadow was stirring again. Monroe gave the order. Prepare boarding teams. Human and Veln. We go inside the ring. Lieutenant Carl Dawson suited up with the rest, his breath loud in his helmet. He had never set foot on an alien ruin before. None of them had. The ring was ancient, its surface pitted with age, covered in symbols that shimmered when touched by light. As their shuttle docked with an airlock that opened without warning, a chill ran through the crew. It was as if the structure was waiting for them. Inside, gravity was weak but present, pulling them toward the inner curve of the ring. The walls pulsed with a faint blue light, matching the rhythm of the original signal. No signs of decay, no dust. It felt alive. They moved in pairs, weapons ready but not raised. The Veln walked with quiet grace, their multi-jointed limbs clicking softly against the metal floor. One of them pointed to a chamber ahead. The door slid open before anyone touched it. Inside, they found them. Beings made of crystal and light, tall and thin, resting in alcoves along the walls. Their forms were cracked, dim, barely holding together. These were the Krell, the last of their kind. One stirred as the humans entered. Its eyes opened like fractured glass catching starlight. Dawson froze. The being did not speak with sound. Instead, words formed directly in their minds, soft and sad. "You heard the call?" Monroe stepped forward slowly. "We did. Who are you?" "I am Kalen, last speaker of the Conquered. We sent the beacon when we knew we could not win. We hoped someone would listen before it was too late." Through shared thought, the Krell showed them more. The Devourers were not just machines. They were a self-replicating swarm, born from a failed attempt to create perfect order. They consumed organic matter, energy, even data, anything that carried complexity. They turned living worlds into silent factories that built more of themselves. The Krell had fought for centuries. In the end, they chose to hide their last survivors inside the beacon and send a warning across time and space. "They sleep now," Kalen whispered in their minds. "But the signal has woken them. They will come." Dawson asked the question no one wanted to voice. "How long do we have?" "Not long. Their hives stir at the edge of your galaxy. They move slow at first, then faster. Always faster." The team recorded everything. Scans, images, the Krell's memories. Nora Finch, watching from Aegis Prime, wept when she saw the data stream. She understood now the signal wasn't just a warning. It was a seed, a spark meant to unite before the fire came. Back on the ring, Monroe made a choice. "We can't leave them here." Kalen shook its head. "We are too weak to travel. Our time is done. But you must take the core. It holds the full history, and the key to stopping them." Deep in the heart of the ring, they found the core, a sphere of swirling light, humming with stored knowledge. The Veln helped carry it to the shuttle. As they left, Kalen gave one final message. "Tell your people. Tell all who listen. Stand together, or fall alone." The return to the fleet was quiet. No cheers, no relief. Only the weight of what they now knew. The Devourers were real. They were coming. And they had already destroyed one great civilization. On Aegis Prime, Ortiz reviewed the core's data with Nora and a team of scientists from every allied species. The Krell had left behind more than history. They had left a weapon, not of fire, but of sound. A harmonic frequency that could disrupt the Devourer's neural network, if broadcast at the right moment from the right place. "It's not a kill switch," Nora explained. "It's a pause. A chance to break their coordination long enough to strike their central hive." "But we don't know where that is," said a Zenth commander, his voice buzzing through the translator. "We will," Ortiz replied, "because now we're not guessing. We're hunting." Preparations shifted from defense to offense. Engineers worked day and night to adapt human and alien ships to carry the harmonic emitter. Pilots trained in swarm evasion tactics. Dawson, now fully trusted by both human and alien crews, helped design new comms protocols that allowed seamless coordination between species who had never spoken the same language. The Velans shared their own records, centuries of hiding, of watching devourer hives grow in the dark. The Droll offered their deep space sensors, capable of detecting the faint energy trails the machines left behind. Even the Gliesa 667 ocean dwellers sent a bioorganic probe that could track the Devourers through gravitational ripples. For the first time, the galaxy wasn't just reacting. It was planning. Monroe gathered his captains, human and alien, aboard the Iron Resolve. No ranks, no titles, just leaders facing the same storm. "We don't know if this will work," he said. "But we know one thing. If we wait, we die. If we run, we die. So we fight." Together, they agreed. A joint strike force would form, the first of its kind. Ships from 5 species flying under one banner, the beacon's light. Back on Earth, schools taught children about the Krell. Factories ran non-stop, building shields and emitters. Families wrote letters to loved ones in the fleet, not knowing if they'd be read. But fear was no longer the only feeling in the air. There was also purpose. Dawson stood on the observation deck again, this time not alone. A young Veln pilot stood beside him, its many eyes fixed on the stars. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Both knew what was coming. The Devourers would rise. Worlds would burn. But this time the galaxy would not be silent. This time it would answer. And the fleet, human, Veln, Zenth, Droll, Gliesa-born, would be ready. Not as separate peoples, but as one. Ortfori's panic spread like fire through the outer colonies. News of the Devourers reached every human world, carried on every channel, whispered in every home. People packed bags, boarded shuttles, demanded answers. On Mars, riots broke out near the spaceport. On Titan, farms shut down as workers fled to orbital shelters. The fear was real and it was loud. But aboard Aegis Prime, Fleet Admiral Lena Ortiz refused to let it win. She stood before the United Terran Alliance Council, her voice calm but firm. "Running won't save us. Hiding won't save us. Only standing together will." She showed them the data from the Krell core, the harmonic frequency, the hive locations, the plan. Then she played the final message from Kalen. Stand together. Or fall alone, the council voted. Not unanimously, but enough. Humanity would not retreat. They would join the Accord. The first Accord was born in a war room, but it lived in every ship that answered the call. Captain Ray Monroe became its field commander, chosen not because he was human, but because he had earned trust across species lines. Lieutenant Carl Dawson led comms, linking human, Veln, Zenth, Droll, and Glisa crews through a new network built on shared signals, not shared language. Dr. Nora Finch worked day and night with alien scientists, refining the harmonic burst so it could be broadcast from any ship, at any time. Training began in the void between stars. Human pilots flew alongside Zenth flyers, learning to read their wing flashes as signals. Droll engineers taught Terran crews how to reroute power through methane-cooled circuits. Veln warriors showed them how to fight in silence, using only light and motion. It was messy. Mistakes happened. A Droll cruiser nearly collided with a Glisa probe during a drill. A Zenth scout misread a human hand signal and fired a warning shot. But they kept trying. Because failure meant extinction. On Earth, children drew pictures of the fleet, not just human ships, but the strange, beautiful vessels of their new allies. Schools taught basic Veln sign and Zenth pulse rhythms. Factories hummed with joint production lines, stamping out parts that fit both human and alien systems. For the first time, the word "we" meant more than one species. Then the first attack came. It wasn't on a human world. It was on a small Droll mining outpost near the Orion Spur. One moment, the station was reporting normal operations. The next, all signals stopped. A patrol ship sent to investigate found nothing but smooth, glassy rock where the outpost had been. The ground was fused. The air was empty. No bodies, no debris, just silence. The Devourers had awakened. Monroe called an emergency meeting of Accord captains. They gathered in a secure channel, their faces flickering on screens, some human, some chitinous, some made of shifting liquid light. "This is it," Monroe said. "They've started. We move now." The plan was simple but dangerous. Use the Krell data to find the nearest active hive. Lure the Devourer swarm into a trap. Broadcast the harmonic burst at the peak of engagement. Then strike the hive core with everything they had. The target was a dead moon orbiting a red dwarf star, deep in the shattered veil, a region littered with asteroid fields and gravitational echoes. Perfect for hiding, perfect for ambush, the fleet assembled. 37 ships from 5 species. Human destroyers with reinforced hulls, Veln stealth wings that bent light around them, Zenth hive carriers loaded with drone fighters, Droll plasma cruisers glowing with stored energy, and the Glisa bioships, living vessels that could heal mid-battle. Dawson coordinated the comms net from the Iron Resolve. Every ship checked in using a new call sign system. No names, just colors and numbers to avoid confusion. Red 7 was a Veln scout. Blue 2 was a Droll cruiser. Green 9 was human. They practiced the sequence again and again. Approach, deploy, hold, burst, strike. Nora Finch rode aboard the science vessel, Wayfarer, her hands steady on the emitter controls. She had tested the frequency 1,000 times. But this would be the first real use. If it failed, the swarm would adapt, and they would never get a second chance. As the fleet jumped into the shattered veil, tension filled every cockpit. The moon appeared on sensors, cold, dead, wrong. Its surface pulsed with faint heat signatures. Not natural, not alive, but moving. Monroe gave the order. Deploy Formation Delta. All ships hold position until the swarm emerges. They didn't wait long. From cracks in the moon's crust, they rose. Thousands of them. Machines shaped like jagged insects made of black metal and sharp angles. They moved without sound, without pattern, yet as one mind. They saw the fleet. And they came. "Here they come," Dawson said, his voice tight. "Hold," Monroe replied. The swarm closed in. Ships fired. Plasma bolts lit the dark. Drone fighters swarmed like angry bees. The Devourers didn't dodge. They absorbed the hits, their bodies reconfiguring mid-flight, growing stronger with every strike. Now, Monroe shouted. Nora activated the emitter. A wave of soundless energy rolled through space. Not loud, not violent, but deep. It vibrated through metal, through bone, through machine minds. For 3 seconds, the swarm froze. Their movements stuttered. Their formation broke. Strike the core. Monroe yelled. Every ship in the fleet fired at once. Missiles, lasers, plasma beams, all aimed at the largest crack in the moon's surface. The ground exploded. Fire bloomed in the vacuum, silent but bright. The harmonic burst held just long enough. Then the swarm collapsed. Not destroyed, but disabled. Their pieces fell like dead leaves onto the moon below. Silence returned on the iron resolve, and no one cheered. They watched the sensors. No new movement. No new signals. The hive was quiet, but Nora knew. They're not gone. Just stunned. They'll wake up. Maybe in years. Maybe in months, Monroe nodded. Then we used the time. The fleet regrouped. Damaged ships limped back to formation. The Veln Scout Red 7 was gone. So was the Droll Cruiser Blue 2. But the rest remained. And they had won. Not a final victory, but a chance. Back on Earth, the news spread. Not of total safety, but of hope. People stopped packing bags. Factories shifted from panic production to long-term defense. Children stopped drawing monsters. They drew the fleet instead. The Accord was no longer just a plan. It was real. It had fought, and it had held. Dawson looked out at the stars, tired but calm. They had faced the Devourers and lived. That meant the galaxy could too. And next time they would be ready. Band 5. The victory at the Shattered Veil did not end the threat, but it changed everything. The Devourers were quiet now, their nearest hive dormant, their swarm scattered into broken pieces across the dead moon's surface. Yet no one celebrated as if the war was over. They knew better. The Krell had warned them. The Veln had shown them. The Devourers always came back, stronger, smarter, hungrier, but the galaxy was no longer alone. Fleet Admiral Lena Ortiz stood on the observation deck of Aegis Prime, watching the slow dance of ships in orbit. Human vessels floated beside Veln wings, Xanth carriers, Droll cruisers, and the soft glowing forms of Gliza bioships. What had begun as a desperate alliance had become something new, a shared home in the stars. The First Accord was no longer just a military pact. It was a promise that no species would face the dark by itself again. Captain Ray Monroe returned from the Veil with scars on his ship and silence in his eyes. He did not speak much in the days after the battle, but when he did, his words carried weight. He pushed for permanent joint bases, shared training academies, and a unified early warning network that stretched from the Orion Arm to the far edge of Xanth space. The Devourers might sleep, but the galaxy would stay awake. Lieutenant Carl Dawson became the voice of that watchfulness. Promoted to fleet liaison, he traveled between species not as a human officer, but as a bridge. He learned to read the pulse lights of the Gliza, to understand the scent markings of the Droll, to interpret the silent dances of the Veln. He no longer needed translators. He listened with his whole self. And in return, others began to trust him, not as an outsider, but as one of their own. Dr. Nora Finch never left the science vessel, Wayfarer. She worked with alien minds to refine the harmonic frequency, turning it from a single burst into a living signal, one that could adapt, evolve, and spread like a song through the void. She called it the Beacon's Echo. It was broadcast now from every Accord world, every ship, every station, not as a warning anymore, but as a lullaby, a gentle hum to keep the Devourers dreaming. Months passed, then a year.
Colonies rebuilt.
Children played under twin suns and methane skies. Schools taught the story of the Krell not as myth, but as lesson. The message was simple. Fear divides. Unity survives. Then the signal changed. It came not from the Devourers, but from deep inside the Krell Ring, now a shared research site guarded by all 5 species. The core, once dim, began to glow with steady light. Kalen, the last Krell, was gone, but before fading it had left one final gift. A map not of hives, but of safe zones, hidden systems shielded by natural anomalies where life could grow without fear. places to run to if the worst ever came. Ortiz called a new council, not in panic but in planning. "We will not wait to be hunted," she said. "We will build sanctuaries, not for one species, for all." Work began at once. Human engineers laid foundations on icy moons. Velen weavers shaped energy shields from starlight. Zenth drones planted forests on barren rock. Droll miners carved cities into asteroids. Klisa bioships seeded oceans with life. The galaxy was healing itself together. Then, without warning, the Devourers stirred again. Not at the edge this time, but closer. A patrol near Proxima Centauri vanished. Sensors picked up the telltale energy drain, the signature of a waking hive. Panic flickered but did not spread. The Accord had trained for this. They had practiced. They had hope. Monroe led the response. Not with a single strike force, but with layers. Scouts first, then sensor nets, then harmonic emitters placed in orbit like tripwires. When the swarm emerged, it flew into a web of sound and light. The beacon's echo played across the system. Not to stun, but to confuse. The Devourers hesitated. And in that hesitation, the fleet struck. Not to destroy, but to drive back. This time they did not fight to win. They fought to protect. To buy time. To show the Devourers that the galaxy was no longer easy prey. The battle lasted 3 days. Ships were lost. Lives were given. But the hive was forced back into dormancy. And the colony world below, home to farmers, teachers, children, remained untouched. Afterward, on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, Monroe looked at Dawson and said, "We're not just defenders anymore. We're guardians." Dawson nodded. He thought of his sister on Luna, now teaching alien children how to speak basic English. He thought of the Velm scout who had saved his life during the Veil battle. He thought of the quiet hum of the Echo, playing softly in every corner of known space. The fleet regrouped, not in triumph, but in quiet resolve. They knew the Devourers would rise again, maybe in 10 years, maybe tomorrow, but they also knew something else. They were ready, not as separate peoples with separate fears, but as one voice, one will, one family of stars. Back on Earth, a child looked up at the night sky and asked, "Are they still out there?" Her mother smiled. "Yes, but so are we." And high above, in the endless dark, the fleet watched, not waiting for an emergency, but standing as the answer to one. They had heard the call first. Now they would always listen.